Welcome to the Norris Group Real Estate Podcast, a show committed to bringing you insights from thought leaders shaping the real estate industry. In each episode, we'll dive into conversations with industry experts and local insiders, all aimed at helping you thrive in an ever-changing real estate market, continuing the legacy that Bruce Norris created, sharing valuable knowledge, and empowering you on your real estate journey. Whether you're a seasoned pro or a newcomer, this is your go-to source for insider tips, market trends, and success strategies. Here's your host, Craig Evans.
All right, welcome everybody. I'm obviously not Craig Evans. I'm your guest host, Joey Romero. And with me today is the one and only Bruce Norris. I'm gonna read your long bio if that's okay. No, I'm not.
No, please.
No, I'm not.
So I'm going to hit fast forward, Joey.
We're trying to engage the listeners, So what we wanted to do is jump on today and just, talk about our event coming up, I Survive Real Estate. One of the really special things that has come out of I Survive Real Estate is the Rohny Award. It wasn't always given, but in 2014, we began giving out the Rohny Award, which was an award that was designed to be given out to people who have impacted the real estate investment or real estate in general in a meaningful way by way of their information, their mentorship, and some of these folks are just flat out teachers. Now, before we get into some of these Rohny Award winners, I want to just give a little love to the people who have committed early and already, sent their sponsorship forms to us. So I want to talk a little bit about the platinum sponsors for I Survive Real Estate. You Karen Hall, she's always great. She was, as soon as we announced we were going to do it again, she's like, I'm in. So that was great. The Fire Center, which is actually the rebrand of the Inland Empire Real Estate Investment Club. Rich Rice and the group from the Inland Empire have committed early. White Feather and Buddy Rushing and Kimberly Rushing. They're once again a platinum sponsor. And our oldest friends, the San Diego Creative Investment Association, SDCIA. We do have a couple gold sponsors that have committed early. NorCal RIA, David Granzella, and we'll have some news on that because there's going to be a kind of a passing of the torch there. NSDREI, Keystone CPA, Phoebe Pasadena, and Ivar. Ivar was actually the first gold sponsor that committed, so that was great. So Bruce, before we get it,
just so you know, Joe, you have two more platinum sponsors.
Yeah, no, I know, but you guys never want the publicity.
No, but I just want people to know we're supporting it. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you guys have always been the silent. What people don't know is that you guys are the reason we have extra chairs for people because oftentimes we sell out, and the only tables we have are the ones that we get to fill because of your generosity.
Okay.
All right. So before we get into that, let's give them a little bit of real estate first. Now, the Fed's meeting today, and they're expected to announce if they're going to cut a quarter or 0.5%. What do you think the difference is going to be, and if they're actually going to follow through?
Yeah, I think it's time that they have a rate cut. I know there's mixed signs on the economy, so if they didn't, I think that would be more of a surprise at this point. So the Fed is probably looking at the job situation more than anything. So you have GDP growth that's still holding in there, but I think there's a lot of layoffs, and I think they're looking down the road saying, okay, that's going to affect unemployment, and that's going to affect the economy. So you have some dominoes that are about to fall, and they're tilting already. It would be hard for them not to fall.
So because I heard somebody say that if they're really worried about the economy isn't super great, then they're going to cut it a half. And if they're okay with it, then they're going to cut it a quarter. So you're thinking they're going to cut a full half percent?
I think that's more probable. But think about how long it's been since they cut anything.
Oh, yeah.
We've been waiting most of the year for somebody to cut something.
Yeah, I know. Early in the year, we had, a lot of realtor representatives. Even at the end of last year, they were like, 2024 is going to be great. We're going to get some rate cuts, and this interest rate's going to go into the mid 6, maybe even 5. and that hasn't come to fruition. And it's shown it, like you've talked about in your presentations, going anything from a 7, like an 8 to 7 to even now at like a high 6 feels like everything's on sale, right?
It's still, it's the key question is who's coming off the sidelines, the person that owns a property with a mortgage at 3%, or the buyer who's been lagging, waiting to get a more reasonable rate. And lenders are actually doing something that's really smart to induce somebody to say yes today, because I know lenders that'll do a second loan at no cost should there be a chance to refi within the next year. So that could get people off the sidelines, because they might sign up for something higher than they really want, knowing that they'll have a chance to get that at no cost in a year or so.
Sure.
So yeah, I think that's a good strategy. Rates have gone down already. Interest rates have come down. Last time I saw it was in the low 6s.
Okay.
So yeah, they're starting to come down without the Fed's help. You have a 10-year T-bill that went down just on the anticipation of all of this. So, historically, if you look at the journey of interest rates, a 6.25% mortgage is a deal, but it's not a deal when your mood isn't euphoric and your price at California is almost 900.
Yeah.
That makes that affordability number, in the teens, and that's usually a peak market price and also a peak motivated buyer. And you don't have that motivated buyer to that extent. You have enough to where you're having price stability, but you also are doing 40% less volume. So the person that's really suffering through this year is the agent and the lender.
Yeah. And then stack on the whole NAR, new rules, it's a new world in real estate, it really is. And everybody's, kind of adjusting to that.
Yep.
All right. So let's get into this, the Rohny Award. Now, come 2014, you, Aaron, decided, hey, we should give a mentorship award. Actually reached out to the Jim Rohn family and got permission to use the name.
Yeah.
So that's a big significant. Can you just touch a little bit on what Jim Rohn has meant to you in your career?
Yeah, I heard Jim Rohn speak one night. I didn't even want to go. I had to go. I worked for a company that was saying, well, we're all going. And I had never been to a talk that was 3 hours. In my mind, I was thinking, my God, that's 6 sermons. I don't know how I'm going to do it. And I still have my original note in the book that I took it in. And my first note was to my brother, who was also there. I said, this guy doesn't need our money. And he got my attention. In other words, I thought there was a much deeper reason why he was doing this. And he told a story that kind of embedded that and why he determined to help other people. A Girl Scout knocked on his door when he was 25 years old, an adult married man, tried to sell him a $2 box of cookies, and she did such a good job he wanted to, but he didn't have $2. So he told her that she was the second one he had seen, and he just bought 10 boxes from another girl. So he lied to her. When he closed the door, he slumped on the floor and cried. And he said, that's never going to happen again. And so it obviously it didn't. And he also carried hundreds of dollars of bills. So if he saw another Girl Scout cookie, like you go to the market, he'd buy them all. So anyway, yeah, that was an impressive night for me. I took notes. I decided, you know what, I think this guy could change my direction completely. And he did. So that night, all morning, I wrote goals for the first time in my life. And it changed my life. So yeah, that's a worthy trophy, man. And we didn't give them away lightly, by the way.
So the first one went out to Coach Jack Fullerton from the Commonwealth Club, which was kind of known as the precursor to the No Pitch Club. It's all education. And so what can you tell me, what can you tell the audience about Coach Fullerton?
Well, it was interesting. We met, and it was sort of, it wasn't a positive meeting in a way. I never had been to a real estate club meeting. Once again, I apparently go to very few meetings up until then. I was always sort of suspicious of the content. Anyway, I did go, and there was a statement he made right at the beginning of his meeting. He said, anybody that says they can buy a house and immediately sell for a profit is lying. And I just thought, my God, that's what I do. And I thought, okay, well, I'm going to tell him. So this was 1986. And the only reason I know that is the car that I had at the time. So I waited to the last person. Me and him were the only two there. And I said, Jack, I actually called him Mr. Fullerton. I said, Mr. Fullerton, I do exactly what you said is not done. That's the only business model I have is I flip houses. And in the parking lot, there was like a Ford Pinto that was 25 years old. And there was a 420 SEL Mercedes that was brand new. Of course, I owned the Mercedes and had no idea that this guy was way richer than I was. He just didn't need anything to show it. And he looked at that car, and I could just tell he kind of wrote me off. Yeah, pal. So he irritated me. And of course, when I get irritated, I raise it to the next level. So I took photos of about 100 properties I had flipped, put them in a book, and mailed it to him, basically just to say, up yours, pal. And so he calls me up. He says, Bruce, I have never seen anything like this. You can teach to my club. I said, teach to your club? I don't want to do that. I just wanted you to know that that's possible. He says, no, I'm serious. You need to do that. You need to come and teach us. Okay. And I was not excited about public speaking. That night we went to a dinner. He gave dinner to the guy that was going to speak. And I didn't eat a thing. He was looking at me going, are you nervous? I said, yeah, I'm nervous. I don't do talks. He said, well, I'll tell you what. And in a way, he said, get the attention off of how you're going to do and realize that you're going to change people's lives tonight if you can teach them what you know. And wow, that was a smart thing. And A.D. Kessler actually was a big influence on another thing that I learned. It was don't worry about perfection. And so all of those things played a part in me being able to speak in front of an audience. I wasn't searching for perfection. I was looking for a way to impact lives. And Jack Fullerton obviously did that a lot. And he was true to his basic setup where, you weren't going to buy your way into speaking in front of Jack Fullerton's club, and that club knew it. If you were speaking, you had earned it somehow.
Well, he actually shifted your thinking a little bit too, right? Because it wasn't he the reason you actually started holding some of this stuff too?
And that wasn't right away, but that was when Marcia got cancer. And he was pretty direct. He says, what will you do if you can't do any work for a while? Okay. I'll get some of that stuff.
Well, and that's he's shifting your thinking about what if you can't do it now, but eventually all of us don't want to do it. So like that's something that we should think about anyways. It's a great vehicle to fund, or at least supplement your retirement.
Yeah, no, it's thank God I have that, It makes my month boring. It does.
Yeah.
It was a wonderful idea.
You need some volatility, Bruce? Is that what you need?
And I think that's what the Rohny Award was looking for is let's find the leaders in our industry that impact other human beings in a very unselfish way.
I'll tell you just really quickly, one thing you had in common. Coach was always a big supporter of, I Survive Real Estate. He, was always a platinum sponsor. And he would always show up, dressed to the nines, nice tuxedo, bow tie and tennis shoes. And the one year you forgot your shoes.
That's right.
And you had to borrow and the only extra pair of shoes that I had was the tennis shoes. So you and Coach had the same thing in common, at least for that one event.
That's funny.
Okay, so the following year we go to another, a great mentor and teacher, Ward Hanigan. Yeah. Now his company Innovest Resorts focused on foreclosures. What can you tell me about Ward, other than his really crazy story, which we've actually had him on, and he's told the stories about him being an orphan and all that, which is I'll recommend that you go find that podcast because It's truly interesting. But how did you come up with choosing Ward?
Well, I took one of his one-on-one classes. It was for trusts, actually. I did put Greg through his foreclosure buying a trustee sale class, and after that, I think Greg bought in a 9-year period 900 houses, so 100 a year, doing what he learned from Ward. Um, Ward has always been very unselfish with what he knows, and in that category, you can't touch. I don't think you can touch him. That's the thing about, I guess everybody has their niche. Ward's was buying at the courthouse steps. He's just, he loves to teach. That's what part of it is. Most people with trustee sales don't want to teach a soul. They don't want anybody else at the sale. Well,
Yeah.
that's the spirit of the I Survived event and the Rohny Award, is that all of these people didn't worry about you being a competitor. They wanted you to be a companion and get what they got.
Yeah, his upbringing would tell you that he should have grown up an introvert, but he's everything but that.
It's interesting. Well, that his life changed in that one comment where remember his relative,
Mm-hmm.
he spent a couple days. He lived in a home, right? He didn't live with a family.
Yep.
He lived in a home.
His aunt would come and pick him up for a couple months and then take him right back.
Yeah. And I don't remember what the relationship was, but it was a very positive experience for him. And she said to him, "I'm no longer going to worry about you, Ward. You are going to end up being a great man."
Yeah.
And he believed it. And I mean, he believed it to the point when crap happened, and there's all that can happen to everybody in the journey. He remembered thinking, "Oh, well, I'm going to be okay because she says I was going to be great."
That's
Powerful.
Yeah, it sure is. I got to meet him at one of the SDCIA Christmas parties, and he was just like holding court in the corner. Just
Oh, yeah.
Everybody was coming in and just talking
yeah.
to him.
I was just there. Yeah, I was just there. Same thing. Yeah. Yeah. That's
all right.
good.
So we go to 2016 now. Mick Blackwell, he was a different cat. You talk to guys like Mike Cantu, they swear up and down that he's the biggest influence that he ever had on his life.
Yeah. He was more of a small meeting guy. Let's have a breakfast meeting once a week, and he would hold court there. But yeah, Mike Cantu would definitely say that Mick Blackwell was a huge influence on his life. I think also the opposite, to be honest with you, Mike Cantu flipped him many, many dozens of homes, if not hundreds of homes, because, Mike, that was part of what he wanted to do was wholesale as he built his own rental portfolio. So Mick was a beneficiary of that. But I think in the beginning, it was interesting. The one thing I really love about both of them is they were facing a really tough time. I've been there a couple times, and they had done a bunch of land purchases, and the market changed, and they owed all of this money. And I think Mike was talking to him, okay, what are we going to do? And Mick said basically, well, I can tell you what we're not going to do. And he got the trust deed out and read the words, "I promise to pay." In other words, we don't have a back door. We solve it.
Yeah.
And they did. They worked, they had land. That's the most unpopular product in a downturn. But they developed a way to, and I think this is the phrase that Mike told me. When you do a trade, let's see if I can remember it verbatim. Take what you have to get what you need to get what you want. It's almost always a two-stage event. So you've got land that doesn't cash flow, but you've got somebody that hates a motorhome that they own, and it's free and clear. Okay, well, you don't really want the motorhome, but you now have something that you can trade for what you want. And so it's always like a several stage process to go when you're trading. And so that's what they did. They traded these lots for, everything under the sun. and a year later they were done.
It's like those experiments online where you start with a paperclip and you see how far you could trade up, and people like end up like with a house. It's like, what? How did that happen?
Yeah.
And so that sounds like the precursor to these exchanger clubs, because there's like clubs now that just that's all they do, right?
That's right. Yeah, it's Pete Fortunato's got one of those, basically.
We'll get to him in a second. So so he was super famous for those lunch meetings, those breakfast meetings. People talk about him. That was like a time in their lives that, man, like you can't go back to him, but they certainly remember him fondly.
Yeah.
So in 2017, we do a twofer. 2017 was actually the first year that I was with the Norris Group. So it was my first I Survived Real Estate. And we had John Schaub, who, was famous for his book, Building Your Rental Portfolio One Rental at a Time. And then Pete Fortunato. So he's always been referred to as the most creative mind in real estate. So what can you tell me about that pair?
Well, it's interesting. We invited him as a pair because that's how I connected him. I just, every time I've seen them, usually they're doing a joint seminar together. What's cool about them is they have a following that repeatedly comes to the seminar. So they have no trouble filling a 300, person place because people are excited to get to hear them again. And they each have a different approach. So that's why they did it together. So, John Schaub is, okay, let's buy a house a year and get to the finish line, of taking care of my cash flow. And Pete Fortunato is on another level of creativity. It makes my head hurt every time I hear him speak. It's like, okay, guy, what was that? His brain thinks of very creative ways to get what you want, and so it's quite a gift that those guys shared what they knew to the real estate community. And I guess that's what maybe all of these people have in common is they didn't have to do that. If they were going to be like a greedy and this is somehow going to cost me, they wouldn't do it. But that's not how they're built. They're not worried about anybody's competition at all. They just get it. They have a love for saying, have I improved somebody's life today? They teach an all-day seminar, and then for the rest of the year, they get calls going, oh my God, this is great,
Well, John, one of the things that I've heard John over the years, through our interviews and, meeting him in person, he was the first really, truly mega successful, real estate investor that valued the work-life balance more than anything. He talks about flying his own airplane to go skiing and taking his whole family, flying to go water ski, somewhere in and so that's one of the things. And Peter with his, his house that he, it's that famous house that he breaks down, right? Can you talk about that?
I have to go to a seminar, but no, it's like, okay, he looks at a house and there's little pockets of goodies, right?
Yeah.
There's equity and there's an existing loan and there's a possibility of income from a lease, etc. So yeah, that's how he looks at this. And every time he's talking to an owner, he's looking for the pocket that works for this situation. So that's how his brain works. It's funny. Last time I talked to John Schaub, he was in his plane. So that's pretty funny. And I've gone to Pete's house a couple of times and we just sat there and talked for a while. So yeah, I think it's nice when I call him, it's like, I'm not calling for anything, just want to say hi. And it's a good connection for him. In other words, I don't have an agenda when I call him. I just think, you're one of those big influences in the industry. I just want to say, hey, how you doing?
In 2018, we go to Fixer Jay DeSima. Now he's on the West Coast and, he's an author. His book was Start Small and Profit Big in Real Estate.
Yeah. And he, a lot of these guys did the keeper stuff, right? Most of them did keepers. And Fixer Jay was definitely in that category. I met him at the NorCal
RIA meeting.
Yeah. And we just started talking and I was just like, holy cow.
Just kindred spirits, right?
This guy knows what he's doing. So that's how Fixer Jay got that award, because he was doing a lot of influencing and teaching up in Northern California. But I hadn't heard of him before. Well, when I got to speak with him for about an hour, and yeah, we sort of did not seem to share much of our time with anyone else once we figured we were kind of on the same page with stuff. But yeah, he was a good guy, and I enjoyed. And again, he had a philosophy that was different. I bought and sold most of everything, and he kept everything.
The next year we go to Dykes Botiford. Now, Pete Fortunato, you have to like watch the recording again or go to a seminar a couple of times because of the way he thinks. Now, Dykes is really getting into and delving into like advanced like tax strategies and giving and things like that, and how that can impact your life and in your retirement, right?
Yeah, I mean my whole retirement plan is based on his seminar. So when I decided to do that, just a few years ago, which was about time, I talked to Pete. He said, just buy Dykes stuff. So, okay, good idea. So I called Dykes up, and he had quite a bad year in the last year, getting injured and all that. So I really haven't felt like I could call him, but he's changed so many lives and taught real estate investors how to protect their stuff. So each of these, that's what's fun about each of those has a niche. That's why they were able to teach together, because it wasn't a repetitive message. And it was nice because you could see, wow, okay, I think John Schaub wants to be flying in a plane rather than talk to somebody across the desk about a real estate deal. Pete Fortunato thinks that's on vacation when he's talking to somebody about a real estate deal. So, and Dykes is very strategic about, okay, it's almost like when you read his seminars, and it literally is in a desk over here. There's a process. Okay, it's almost like if you want to get to silver level, then this is what you do. If you want the gold level, then this is what you do. If you want the platinum level, then you go through this. And it was,
it's laid out.
It was laid out, but it was understandable too. That was the part that was good, is that I could go, okay, I got it. I understand the process. And I don't think I ever had done that before. And part of the problem is when you sit in front of somebody, they always have a different take, and it's inaccurate. I have never sat in front of an attorney that agrees with another attorney's process. And I don't know Dykes Botiford's education. I don't think he's an attorney. I think he's a street smart real estate investor that figured out how the laws work, how to protect your stuff.
Yeah, he actually went to Georgia Tech and had some engineering degree and just ended up in real estate and then leading like the car of Georgia,
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
So for the next 2 years through the pandemic, we went dark with the Rohny Award. We still had the event, but it was virtual, and we didn't feel right. I remember Aaron and you guys talking about it just didn't feel right not being able to hand something to them and properly give them their their roses as you might say. So we went dark in 2021 and 2020, but we came back in 2022 with the event, first live event in 3 years, and we had like the mentor's mentor. Like this guy was the guy that all of these guys we're talking about looked up to and were taught at some point, and that was Jack Miller.
Yeah. And it's interesting. You just said it correctly. And what was so nice about and so respectful is that a lot of these guys lived in Florida as Jack Miller did. But we gave the Rohny Award at the Nixon Library event, but all those other guys in Florida came out to receive it because Jack Miller had passed. So it was an honorarium, I guess what you say.
They bought a table and they called it the Friends of Jack.
There you go. That's when you've gotten somebody's respect. And I remember Mike Cantu telling me one time he had talked to Jack Miller, and Miller had spent like hours reading the IRS code and found a cool niche he didn't know existed. He was all, yeah.
Fired up.
Yeah, I think I think what's common in everybody is they love to share what they know. They weren't afraid of anybody's competition. It had changed their life, and the rest of their life was going to be about sharing just that. It gives me it's much more meaningful than real estate, way more.
He was the first one that we had. I personally had to do a lot of research on because I couldn't just call him and
Right,
talk to him,
right.
and one of the things that was overwhelming is that everybody went to his meetings. They were at his house for one. The meetings are at his house, and it was like he's always feeding people, and he enjoyed his little glass of wine, and it was like, all right, let's talk about business, but let's have fun together. And you felt like you were part of his family, and
Okay.
that's why they made such an impact. He made such an impact on guys like Pete, guys like John. He's like like the Bill Belichick, right? Where now Bill Belichick, he's retired, but he has all these guys that were coaches for him that are now head coaches, and now they're the ones leading the industry. So he was certainly one that I came into it a little late, but it would have been fun to know him because of just the way he ran things, and he was, again, the common theme is giving more than taking. He didn't need anything. He could have retired a long time ago.
I took one seminar of his, and it was because I needed to figure out how to make an offer on the 50 lots in Palm Springs. And what was interesting about, and this is true of Jack Miller seminars, is that you got a book and then he taught a different seminar. I mean, it was like out of his head. He didn't need to look at a note.
Two for one.
If you were trying to follow along, it wasn't going to happen. He knew his stuff well enough. He did not need to bother with that book. I'm sure it covered the same stuff, but different sequence. And I was kind of lost because I was a newbie, and I was just like, okay. So I did buy those 50 lots.
Well, it worked.
Yeah.
So in 2023, we decided that it would probably be the last year for the Rohny Awards. And we gave it to Aaron. And now Aaron certainly wasn't as prolific, as some of these guys, in the fact that he didn't run a club for many years, or he didn't run seminars for many years. But the impact that he had on people was just as great as some of these people. And to this day, when people ask me to describe Aaron, I get asked a lot. I simply tell them he was the best person I've ever known.
Yeah, I agree with that. When he passed, I mean, of course I cried, but I was so proud. And I just thought, wow, I was so lucky. I learned a lot from him, and I mean, this whole idea of, he comes up, he didn't work for the company too long before he dreamed this thing up. Dad, let's have a charity event. The company will pay for everything, and the money that's donated will all go to, okay, yeah, I'll do that. But that wasn't normal, right?
It was hard to say no to him, right?
Oh yeah, no, I'm going to say no to that. But I just thought, well, that's what Aaron does. How do we do good for people? He was so unselfish and so caring about other people. And you know what? You know whose philosophy he liked most?
Who's that?
John Shaw.
Yeah.
He didn't want to flip 90 houses. That would drive him nuts. He wanted to own one house at a time.
Yeah. He credited John to actually bringing him into being a real estate investor.
Yeah, I think, when he was growing up, we were dealing with homes that had that were nasty. He was in there picking up dead cockroaches at 5 years old and stuff like that. I'm sure that's not a real fond memory, but yeah, he just wanted to do less volume and end up keeping stuff, which, kind of is what he did. So that worked for him. But his great gift was he loved people. He loved people maybe I've told this story before, but this is the spirit of what was in him was so unusual. He was in the acting, kids acting. Had gotten good enough where he was getting most of the lead roles for every male part in a play. And he had done a tryout, and I think it was Mary Poppins, and he was the lead role, the Dick Van Dyke role. And at the time, we had a weight room in the house. I was working out, and he had found out he got the lead role. And as I rested in between reps, I could hear him calling different people, and so the whole people that's a cast is getting called by Aaron. And my mind went to, well, what would Bruce Norris be doing? Hey, I got that isn't what he did. He was calling, and he downplayed whatever happened to him. He said, "What'd you get?" And then the kid go, "Well, I'm only a whatever." Oh no! Oh, that is so cool. That'll be so neat. And by the time the next Saturday came about, the 50 kids that were in the play were just excited if they were a stump because they could make that special. That's what he did for people. And he constantly did that for his whole life. Another memory, if you don't mind, he's getting radiation treatment in UCLA. This is the second visit, and I think the visits were 2 weeks apart. So we were at UCLA 2 weeks before that for, whatever time frame it took him to get the treatment. So we come back, I park the car, I go walk up to where he's going to get treatment. And as I pass by the nursing station, it's literally a buzz. And I overhear Aaron Norris is back. And I'm like, holy.
Well, it was actually 6 weeks that in between is 6 weeks. So 6 weeks had gone, and they were still.
They know him by name, and they're excited he showed up. I mean, that's such an amazing gift. I do pray, and that makes sense to me, that he's onto something new and doing the same thing. I hope that's allowed.
So for me, I just remember him getting so excited for people. Like if you got to Aaron and you got to tell him what you were doing and it was something great, he would celebrate it like you had won the World Series. Like he would be your biggest fan. Hey, how can I help? Do you need money? Like he was like in, and he would be your biggest fan. And I think his greatest attribute was everybody who got to meet him, whether it was for 5 minutes or, was blessed with more time, truly made him feel like they were a friend. Yeah. They were not just somebody who he was using to, let me get to the next guy. No, he truly made them feel special. Like obviously you probably got inundated. I got inundated with just, stories of how, hey, I met Aaron at this club and I didn't speak to him very much, but man, he was like interested in what I was doing and right away was like, oh, did you try this? Or, hey, we've been doing this, and just giving them suggestions just right there. And, a lot of these people's like nobody, I was going to these clubs and nobody would talk to you sometimes. And, but I got to meet Aaron. Not only did he give a great presentation, but then afterwards he would sit around and talk to everybody. He would go hang out with people. Like that was I think his greatest gift is making you feel like you were special, whether you met him for 2 seconds or you were in, his circle.
Yeah. And that so sincere. It's just, I was so lucky to have him as a dad, watching him grow up and do all those things at his funeral. It's kind of spoke for itself, right? I mean, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, and it was a celebration.
Yeah,
we're glad we got to know this guy.
Standing room, it wasn't big enough, and it was the biggest room that they had at at the church there in Riverside. How do you transition from that? Well, I'll give everybody a little bit of an update, because I don't know if a lot of people know or don't know, but as he's battling cancer, I'm gonna try and get through this, Bruce. Okay. As he's battling cancer, he's working hard on what am I gonna do? Not only with the treatments, how he can possibly beat this, but he was already thinking is like, how am I going to continue to leave a legacy and continue to impact the lives of people? And what he did was he set up the Aaron Norris Creative Fund. And it was a fund that he put the seed money into. A lot of his wealth got put into this fund. And it was so that it could give to people and kids pursuing the love of the arts. And this last year, on the second anniversary of his passing, we were able to give several big grants to Riverside Children's Theater, the Riverside Arts Academy. And so a lot of people are still going to benefit from Aaron's love and Aaron's just passion to give back to the community. And I'm lucky enough to still be involved in it. And so right now, like it's turned a moment of just pure sadness for me to know that I'm carrying out his dream. His dream was to help that little boy. And it's funny that you said the Mary Poppins, that was the play that he was doing. We had the Riverside Children's Theater come and do, a couple numbers from their current, and it just happens to be Mary Poppins. So it was fitting. It was certainly fitting. And his old theater friends came out and they talked. And so we're going to be doing that again. And we'll do that every July 1st. We'll be announcing, we're going to try and, make that event a bigger deal. And I'll make sure I invite you, next year. I think I downplayed it a little bit because I didn't know how it was going to go. But, would love to have you again.
You bet.
October 25th, everybody. That's when I Survived Real Estate in its 17th year. Wow. And it's certainly, a great tradition that was started, with Bruce and Aaron, but now it's grown to something that, a lot of real estate investors, a lot of realtors, a lot of people look forward to, getting dressed up. The joke is that, it's the only, it probably is the first and last time Peter Fortunato ever wore a tie, right?
Yeah.
It's at the Nixon Library again. We are, our charities, Make-A-Wish this year. I'm truly looking forward to that night. We have some great new panelists. We mixed it up a little bit. We're going to have Bill Allen from Seven Figure Flipping, Mark Delatour. We have the chief economist of Fannie Mae, Mark Palem, he's going to be the one because Doug Duncan retired, and Selma Hepp, the chief economist of CoreLogic. We are working on a little bit of a surprise. We still kind of got some feelers out there. Hopefully we can get something a little more realtor centric, but if we can't, we're going to have a great panel and a great night already. So that Fed question and the inflation, that's going to be something that's going to be a great topic, and I'm sure we'll tackle on the panels.
You bet.
Well, Bruce, thank you for jumping on. Really appreciate it. It was really fun going down memory lane with the Rohny Award, and maybe we'll talk to Craig. And next year we'll do a version of it. Maybe we call them the ANAs, the Aaron Norris Awards, or something like that. That'd be something unique to us. But hopefully you enjoyed our Rohny Award special. And Bruce, thank you so much for jumping on and going down memory lane with us.
You bet, Joey. Enjoyed it.
For more information on hard money loans, trust deed investing, and upcoming events with the Norris Group, check out thenorrisgroup.com. For more information on passive investing through the DBL Capital Real Estate Investment Fund, please visit dblcapital.com.
The Norris Group originates and services loans in California and Florida under the California DRE license 01219911, Florida Mortgage Lender license 1577, and NMLS license 1623669. For more information on hard money lending, go to thenorrisgroup.com and click the hard money tab.